you asked about big influences. The guy who ran the homicide squad in for the Fort Lauderdale Police Department, a guy named George Hurt. Um, Crazy name, Hurt, Sergeant Hurt. Sounds like a MC Universal character, but he kind of took me under wing. He was a Vietnam vet. The Vietnam War was important to me. I was in the last draft, so I didn't have to go or anything like that. I knew I kind of skipped it, but I all through high school. I mean, I wasn't a good student. I wasn't even sure I was going to go to college or get into a college. And it was in my mind that this could be my destination. And, I went to a school where they would announce on the speaker when a former student had died over there and so forth. So it was something I paid attention to, and was important to me. And then I escaped it. And I did get into college and was flunking out when I got, and my number was really high in the last draft. So I knew I wasn't going to get drafted. I think the highest number they had ever taken was 120, and I was like 210 or something. Can't remember the numbers, but at one point I knew I'm not getting drafted. And I then further stopped going to classes and flunked out. But just Vietnam was important. And then I also spent time on my father was in the construction business, and I would work for him a lot when I was in high school, and especially in summers. And I was on a crew with a guy who had been a tunnel rat in Vietnam, and I was just fascinated and by what I thought had to have been the most scary thing you could do in a wartime situation. And so I was just, fixated on all that kind of stuff. And then, like I said, when I get to Los Angeles and my first day on the job, I'm assigned to work on a story about a robbery where I came to work on a Tuesday after Labor Day weekend. So robbers had spent the weekend tunneling underneath the bank and then up into the safe deposit box vault and opened box for 3 days and looted all the boxes. So it was a really uh, big and interesting heist. And so all these things kind of came together. All these my interests that I had all kind of came together like atoms creating a new compound or whatever the chemistry thing is. It all at once I knew on my first day at work that my next effort to try to write fiction was going to be about this. And it was going to be about a tunnel rat who's now a detective and he gets this tunnel heist to work on. So it all came together, one of those kind of miracle moments. A lot of him ended up in Harry Bosch, and he was a very impressive character to me. At a time, I was being a journalist, but I was at night. I was trying to, I guess you could call it experiment. I was trying to write fiction at night and learning how to do it, and searching for character. That's the big key. And here I had almost a daily interaction with him, an amazing character. When I first engaged in Bosch, the painter, was in college in a humanities class. And again, it was one of those lucky things that the professor was just fascinated with the painter's work and the sometimes undiscernible meanings behind what he was doing. I mean, there's a general like world gone wrong or the wages of sin theme in his work, but there's a lot going on. And, 500 some years later, they still don't know what everything means, and they never will. And that mystery alone is pretty fascinating. So anyway, I was steeped in Hieronymus Bosch, when I got out of college. And so I guess it was about, let's see, I graduated in 80. So about 8 or 9 years later, I'm putting together this detective in Los Angeles, and I drew I think the obvious corollaries between Bosch's most famous work, Garden of Earthly Delights, and Los Angeles, which was to me a modern. I was going for this metaphor of a modern Garden of Earthly Delights, because within those paintings there's the good and the bad, and I was seeing that as a reporter covering crime out here. And this was pre-internet. This was I started first started my first book came out with Harry Bosch in '92, but I started writing it. I got to LA in '87, got the plot the first day I went to work. So by the end of '87, I was writing the book that would become The Black Echo. There was no internet then, so it's like probably if you went out on the street and said, "What does the name Hieronymus Bosch mean to you?" You'd probably get 2 out of 10 people to say, "I think he's a painter." It was very obscure, which I thought worked because if you knew who the painter was, if you're reading my book and you knew, "Oh, he's using that painter's name," and you knew the paintings, you would get the metaphor. If you didn't, I thought it would work because you'd be, "I better read some more about this, find out where he got that name and what that name might mean." And so I just kind of thought it was, a good thing. And that was also comes out of my reading and Harry Crews and so forth. The lesson I learned from prior to writing myself was that it's all about character. You might be writing about a homicide investigation, but you're really writing about a character conducting a homicide investigation, and that's different. And so the lesson or the idea is never miss a chance to say something about your character, and that would include a name. So that's where all that thought went into that the decision to use that name. And it was the reporter in me that I kind of instinctively knew that if I aged them in real time against a city that's changing in real time, I could continue my reporting, my journalism, and that would hopefully give. Again, it comes back to like, how do you keep plugged in? And I just thought that would be a good way for me to stay involved and excited about writing these stories. And, hopefully, if I get to continue to do it, it would give it some gravitas, and realism, coming from the journalism of side of things. Realism was a very important thing to me. I had access to cops. Um, I kind of said like I got to use what I mean. Even though I grew up loving private eye novels, I ended up writing cop novels because that's what I had access to, and that was really important.